Jake entered the living room of the mansion, holding a folder of documents. The afternoon heat in Beverly Hills was intense, but he barely noticed it. His mind was elsewhere, absorbed in the numbers and strategies of his latest million-dollar acquisition. However, when he looked up, something made him stop abruptly. In front of him, a young woman was rearranging some plant pots, carefully organizing the room's ornaments. She wore a simple maid's uniform, but what caught Jake's attention wasn't her unexpected presence. It was the familiar sparkle hanging around her neck, a necklace he knew all too well. Jake's heart raced. It was his mother's necklace. Or rather, it was identical to the one she wore every day until her death years ago. He couldn't tear his eyes away from it, as if a flood of memories had suddenly resurfaced in his mind. "Where did you get that?" Jake's voice came out harsher than he intended. The young woman turned around, visibly startled. This necklace. It belonged to my mother." Her words echoed in Jake's mind. He could barely process them. Her mother. How was that possible? And why was the necklace here, in his house, with a new maid? Something was terribly wrong. He needed answers. Jake remained standing, frozen, watching the young woman as she tried to gather her words, visibly unsettled by the sharp gaze he cast at her. The maid looked around as if searching for an excuse to escape the discomfort. But there was no easy way out. The grand mansion, with its luxurious rooms and exquisite furniture, now felt stifling, too small for this unexpected encounter. "You said that necklace belonged to your mother," Jake repeated, his tone less aggressive but still clearly shaken. He couldn't take his eyes off the object. His mind was flooded with memories of his mother, the sweet scent of her expensive perfumes, her quiet laughter at gala dinners, and above all, that necklace. A gift from his father, passed down through generations. There couldn't be another like it. Anna took a deep breath, appearing uncomfortable but answering with a firm gaze. "Yes, it was my mother's. She gave it to me before she passed away. Said it was a family heirloom, something important. A family heirloom." Those words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He felt the weight of his mother's memory and the secret that necklace carried. But how could it be with the new maid? The maid he hadn't even noticed when she arrived, since it was Uncle Robert who handled the staff hiring, since Jake's parents had died. "What's your name again?" he asked, now with more curiosity and less rigidity. "Anna Lopez," she responded simply, though Jake could hear the tension in her voice. "Anna Lopez." He repeated the name mentally. It didn't sound familiar, but something about the way she held the necklace between her fingers, as if it were the most precious thing in the world, made him want to dig deeper. He knew his family's history well, but this situation unearthed a void he had never considered. Who was Anna, really, and what was her true connection to that necklace? For a few seconds, Jake pondered what to do. It wasn't like him to confront the staff directly. His Uncle Robert always advised him to maintain a certain distance from the household staff to avoid getting involved in trivial matters. But this didn't feel trivial. This young woman wore an object that belonged to his mother, and it wasn't a coincidence. "When did you start working here?" He tried to sound casual, but his tone betrayed the urgency of his curiosity. "A few weeks ago," Anna answered, clearly uncomfortable with the interrogation. "I was hired by Mr. Robert." Jake stepped back, processing the information. His Uncle Robert, always in control, always involved in every important family decision. He had been Jake's guardian since his parents' tragic accident, a cold, calculating man who preferred to handle problems his own way, without fanfare. Something about this hire was beginning to seem much more complicated than a simple coincidence. Jake wasn't one to believe in conspiracies, but Anna's presence and the necklace cast a shadow of doubt. He felt a nagging discomfort in the pit of his stomach, as if the past was about to invade his present in a brutal way. "Do you have family around here?" he asked, trying to sound gentler. "No, not really. My mother, well, she passed away a few years ago. Since then, I've been on my own," Anna said, averting her gaze, clearly uneasy with the direction the conversation was taking. "This job is very important to me." The revelation that Anna was alone in the world stirred an unexpected empathy in Jake, but he couldn't ignore the fact that something was wrong. He didn't know what to think, but he felt that this mystery demanded an answer. In the days that followed, Jake began to observe Anna more closely. She worked hard, always discreet, almost invisible in the corners of the mansion. Her movements were careful, her silence nearly imperceptible. Yet, every time he saw her, the gleaming necklace hanging around her neck seemed to pull him into a reality he had never wanted to face. The idea that something in his family was hidden, and perhaps everything he thought he knew about his past was a great illusion. One evening, after another long day of meetings and corporate decisions, Jake sat in the mansion's office, lost in thought. He swirled a glass of whiskey in his hands, his eyes fixed on the unlit fireplace before him. Anna's necklace continued to haunt his mind. This wasn't a coincidence. But how do you start investigating something so deeply connected to your own family's history? The sound of the office door opening gently pulled him from his reverie. He turned to see his Uncle Robert enter with his usual imposing posture, a faint, calculated smile on his face. "Jake, how's business?" Robert asked casually. But Jake noticed something different that night, something subtle in his uncle's tone, a trace of concern disguised as cordiality. "They're going well," Jake replied, curtly. Robert's presence always made him feel defensive. "By the way, Uncle, you know Anna, right? The new maid?" Robert raised an eyebrow, as if the question had come out of nowhere. "Yes, of course. I hired her. Why?" Jake measured his words carefully, trying to sound as non-threatening as possible. "She has a necklace that belonged to my mother. Identical, actually." Robert kept his serene expression, but something in his gaze shifted. Just for a second. A quick blink, almost imperceptible. But Jake caught it. "Just a coincidence, Jake," Robert said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Many old pieces of jewelry have replicas out there. You're tired. You shouldn't worry about this." But Jake wasn't satisfied. He knew this was the beginning of something bigger, something his uncle was desperate to keep buried. In the days that followed, Jake couldn't get Anna and the necklace out of his mind. The more he thought about it, the more something didn't add up. His Uncle Robert's slightly unsettled look when the necklace was mentioned didn't go unnoticed either. There was something he wasn't telling him. And for the first time, Jake began to wonder what else his uncle might be hiding. He decided to investigate on his own. That evening, after a brief conversation with the house manager, he learned that Anna had been hired without much bureaucratic process. The selection had been handled exclusively by Robert Dye, without any background checks, something that wasn't uncommon, but considering what was at stake, this information left Jake suspicious. Jake combed through old documents of his mother's, searching for something that could explain the necklace's origin. He spent hours in the office, sifting through old papers, photo albums, letters, but he found nothing that clarified how such a significant piece could have ended up around the neck of a household employee. He remembered the nights his mother wore that necklace to important events, how his father always emphasized how valuable it was, not just monetarily, but for the meaning it held for the family. Meanwhile, Anna continued to work, increasingly uncomfortable with Jake's watchful eyes on her. He didn't make a point of hiding the fact that he was observing her. Anna felt growing pressure every time she passed him in the mansion's hallways. However, despite the discomfort, she had no idea she was at the center of a mystery far beyond her expectations. One afternoon, while organizing books in the mansion's vast library, Anna encountered Jake again. He stood by one of the windows, staring out at the horizon. He seemed lost in thought, but when he noticed Anna's presence, he slowly turned. His eyes were serious, almost hard. "Do you have any living relatives?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence abruptly. Anna hesitated. "No. My mother passed away a few years ago. I never knew my father. He was never around. And my mother didn't talk much about the past." Jake approached slowly. "And that necklace, did your mother tell you where it came from?" She swallowed hard, feeling the tension in the air. "She said it was a family heirloom. She didn't go into details, just told me to take care of it. I've kept it with me ever since she died." Jake stepped back, running a hand over his face in frustration. Something didn't make sense. How could that necklace, so important to his own family, be in the hands of someone completely unknown? And why had his mother never mentioned this connection? He knew he needed more answers, and Anna seemed as lost as he was. That night, Jake decided to confront his uncle Robert directly. It was past 10 o'clock when he knocked on the door to the office where Robert spent hours reviewing company documents. His uncle was sitting in his large leather chair, a glass of cognac beside him, examining some papers. "Jake," Robert began, without even looking up, "is there a problem?" Jake entered without asking permission, his posture rigid. "Anna, the new maid. I want to know more about her." Robert stopped leafing through the papers for a moment, but didn't seem surprised. He leaned back in his chair, lifting the glass of cognac to his lips before responding. "What exactly do you want to know?" "The necklace she wears. That was my mother's necklace. Identical. How could she be wearing that? And why did you hire her without consulting me?" Robert sighed, a long, calculated sigh. "Jake, you're overreacting. Like I said, it's just a coincidence. There are many old pieces of jewelry out there that look alike. There's no need to raise baseless suspicions." But Jake wasn't convinced. There was something about Robert's posture, about his evasive tone, that made him believe his uncle knew much more than he was willing to admit. The tension between them grew, each word exchanged adding more weight to the air. "Coincidence? Do you really expect me to believe that? Her mother's dead, and now she shows up here with the same necklace my mother wore. This isn't just a coincidence, and you know it." Robert remained silent for a moment, his eyes darkening. He knew he couldn't push Jake's suspicions aside any longer. "Jake, some things are better left in the past. You don't need to dig into this." That response only fueled Jake's anger further. "What things, Uncle? What exactly are you hiding?" Robert stood up slowly, his expression finally changing. He no longer looked like the calm, controlled man he had always been. There was something dark in his eyes. "I did what was necessary to protect this family, and you would do well not to dig any deeper." Jake held his ground, unfazed by the implied threat. But he knew that from that moment on, his relationship with Robert would never be the same. He was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The next day, Jake decided to confront Anna directly. She was in the garden, trimming some plants when he approached her, a sense of urgency in his steps. "Anna, I need you to tell me more about your mother. Anything you know." Anna looked at him with startled eyes, not fully understanding what was happening. "I've already told you everything I know, sir. My mother was very private. She didn't talk much about the past." "But you must remember something," Jake insisted, trying to keep calm. "Something she might have said, a name, a place. Anything that could help us understand where that necklace came from." Anna sighed, clearly uncomfortable. "She always said our family had a legacy, something important, but I never knew what she meant." Those words triggered something in Jake. Legacy. Could his mother and Anna's mother be connected in a way far deeper than he had ever imagined? Later that day, Jake returned to the mansion's library, determined to continue his search for answers. He spent hours poring over books and old papers. Finally, he found something. A letter, old and yellowed with time, addressed to his mother. The letter mentioned a lost daughter, a child who had been separated from the family due to an internal dispute. Jake felt his blood run cold. Anna. She wasn't just a coincidence. She was part of the family. Jake stood frozen before the old letter, feeling his heart race. The words written there changed everything. He reread the paragraph that had caught his attention. The decision to remove the child was made for her own good. "I know you will always have doubts, but the family's safety comes first. The true heir must never know her past. If anything happens, do what is necessary to ensure this secret dies with you." He could hardly breathe. The true heir. It didn't make sense. His mother was talking about a lost daughter, someone who had been removed from the family to protect something. But who was she talking about? His heart raced as he realized the only possible conclusion. Anna. That letter couldn't be talking about anyone else. Anna wasn't just a coincidence, a random new maid. She was part of the family, the true heir, and Uncle Robert had hidden this secret for all these years. Jake could barely process what this discovery meant. Anna was the legitimate heir to the fortune, which explained why the necklace, a symbol of their lineage, was in her hands. But why had she been removed? And why had Robert gone to such lengths to keep this secret buried? Jake knew he couldn't face this alone. He needed answers, and the only person who could provide them, aside from Anna, was Robert. He crossed the mansion in quick strides, the wide, decorated hallways now feeling more stifling than ever. He reached Robert's office and, without knocking, opened the door forcefully. His uncle was there, as usual, sitting in his leather chair, with the same cold calmness that characterized him. "Jake," Robert began, lifting his gaze from the desk, "you seem agitated. I want answers. Now." Jake slammed the door behind him, his eyes blazing with anger and frustration. He held the letter in his hand, raising it for Robert to see. "You owe me an explanation. What is this? Who is the true heir?" For a moment, Robert didn't react. He simply observed Jake with that calculating gaze, as if weighing his options. Then, slowly, he stood, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt before speaking. "Jake, certain things were done in the past to protect this family. Not everything is as simple as it seems." "Protect the family," Jake interrupted, furious. "This letter talks about a lost heir, someone who was taken away. You hid this from me. You hid everything from me. Anna is part of our family, isn't she?" Robert closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if preparing for a battle he knew was inevitable. "Yes," he finally admitted, the word leaving his mouth reluctantly. "Anna is the daughter your mother had outside of marriage. Your father never knew. It was a well-kept secret." Jake felt as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. Anna, his sister, the illegitimate child. The secret his mother had carried all her life. He couldn't believe this was happening. "But why?" Jake asked, still trying to piece it all together. "Why remove her? Why hide this? And why is she the true heir?" Robert sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Your father built an empire. He was proud of everything he achieved. But there was one thing he could never accept: betrayal. Your mother. She had an affair. Anna is the result of that relationship. When she was born, your mother knew she couldn't keep the child here. It was a difficult decision, but Anna was given to be raised by another family. No one was ever supposed to know." Jake stood there, paralyzed, Robert's words washing over him like a flood. His mother had had an affair. Anna had been hidden, and all this time, he had believed he knew his family. "The necklace," Jake muttered, as if talking to himself. "She gave the necklace to Anna, knowing one day she would return." "Yes," Robert agreed, his voice low and somber. "The necklace was the only thing your mother could leave for her, a symbolic heirloom, something that would connect her back to her true origin." Jake took a deep breath, trying to absorb all these revelations. He knew there was more. "But why is Anna the true heir? I'm the legitimate son. How could she have more rights than me?" Robert shook his head. "It's not that simple. When your mother had Anna, she made an agreement with the girl's biological father. Part of your family's fortune was designated for Anna, and it was kept hidden from everyone, including you. Legally, Anna has rights that you don't. She's the heir to your mother's share." Jake stepped back, feeling the weight of the truth crushing him. His mother had done everything to ensure Anna had a part of the family's fortune, even if it meant keeping Jake in the dark. The fact that he had never known any of this made him feel betrayed, confused. "You knew this all along," Jake said, his voice cold. "You knew she was my sister. You knew she had a right to this inheritance. Why did you keep this hidden? Why did you hire Anna and bring her here without telling me?" Robert looked directly into Jake's eyes, and for the first time, he seemed vulnerable. "I did what I thought was best. Your mother trusted me to protect the family. She wanted Anna to have a simple life, away from the complications of money and power. I hired Anna because I knew she would eventually discover the truth. It was inevitable. But I wanted to control the situation. I wanted to ensure that, when it happened, you were prepared. Prepared! Jake stepped forward, anger pulsing. You didn't prepare me for anything. You hid this from me. From both of us. The silence hung between them for a moment. Jake knew he could no longer trust Robert. He had manipulated everything for years. But now, Jake had something Robert could no longer control: the truth. After confronting Robert, Jake went straight to Anna. He found her in the servants' quarters, still wearing the same necklace that had been at the center of this entire mystery. She was sitting on the bed, flipping through an old photo album she had brought with her, unaware of Jake's presence until he knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice soft. Anna looked up, surprised, but nodded. "Of course." Jake stepped inside and remained silent for a few seconds, watching her before finally saying what had been weighing on him. "I know who you are, Anna. You're not just a maid, you're my sister." Anna stared at him, surprised and confused. "What are you saying?" He moved closer and sat beside her. "I found out everything. My mother, our mother, she had you before marrying my father. You're the rightful heir to our mother's share of the fortune, and the necklace. It was her way of making sure you would one day find your way back to the family." Anna sat in stunned silence, processing Jake's words. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the weight of the revelation. I didn't know," she murmured, her voice trembling. "My mother never told me." Jake took Anna's hands, a gesture that conveyed silent understanding. "We were both kept in the dark, but now we know the truth, and we have to decide what we're going to do about it." Anna remained silent for several minutes, processing the weight of the truth Jake had just revealed. The modest room she was in, with its simple furniture and white walls, felt too small to contain the enormity of the situation. The revelation that she was Jake's sister and the true heir to her mother's fortune had hit her like a wave, knocking her down again and again. This is unbelievable," she said, her voice breaking. "I always wondered about my mother's past, but I never imagined something like this. I never imagined she had hidden me from a family like yours." Jake watched Anna's emotions carefully. He knew that, for her, just as for him, this was an overwhelming shock, but there was more at stake than just the emotions involved. There was the issue of the fortune, the legacy, and how they would deal with Uncle Robert, who had kept everything hidden for so many years. "You have every right to feel confused, Anna," he said, trying to be as understanding as possible. "I am too. But now that we know the truth, we need to think about how we're going to move forward. Robert, he's hidden everything from us. And in a way, he's controlled our lives the entire time." Anna looked at him, still with uncertainty in her eyes. "What does he want with all of this? Why did he hire me now? If he knew who I was, why didn't he keep me away?" Jake sighed, feeling the pressure of what he needed to explain. "He told me he knew one day you would find out the truth, and he wanted to control the situation. He thought he was protecting us by keeping it all buried. But I think, deep down, he was trying to protect himself. Keep control of the fortune, the family, everything." Anna pressed her lips together, her expression hardening. "I don't want any of this fortune, this life. I just wanted a job. I don't want to get involved in this power game." "But you're involved, Anna," Jake said gently. "Whether you like it or not, you have a right to part of this inheritance. And more than that, you have the right to know the truth about our mother. We both do." Anna sighed, looking down at the necklace around her neck, the same one that had sparked this entire story. "I feel like my mother, she did what she thought was right. But I can't help feeling like I was robbed of a life I never knew. And now, I don't know if I want to be part of this. I don't know if I want this life." Jake thought for a moment. "You have every right not to want any of this? But whatever you decide, I want you to know that, to me, you're my sister, and I'll stand by you, no matter what happens." Anna smiled slightly, touched by Jake's words. "Thank you, Jake. I've never had a family, and now it's like I've found something I never knew I was looking for." They sat in silence for a moment, just appreciating each other's company. The bond between them was growing, and despite all the confusion, there was something genuine about the connection they were starting to build. They had been separated by the past, but now they were united by the truth. Jake then continued. "About Robert. The lawyer is already handling the papers. He won't have control over anything anymore. Your share will be transferred to you. But I want you to know that you don't have to make any decisions now. I don't want you to feel pressured into getting involved in this world if you don't want to." Anna nodded, still unsure of the future. I don't know what I'll do, but thank you for that, Jake. I think I need some time to think." Jake placed a hand over hers. "Take all the time you need. No one will pressure you." Later that day, Jake went to Robert's office, where his uncle now seemed like a completely different man. The control and arrogance he had once displayed were gone. He sat behind his desk, but the look he gave Jake was tired, defeated. "You've won, Jake," he said, without any trace of anger. "I knew this day would come, eventually, that you would find everything out." Jake looked at him, but this time without rage. "This was never about winning, Robert. It was about the truth. You hid this from me, from Anna, but I think, deep down, you did it more to protect yourself than to protect us." Robert sighed. Maybe I was trying to protect what was left of our family, but in the end, I did it all wrong." Jake nodded. "You made mistakes. Many. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life hating you for it. What matters now is that things are being set right. Anna will decide what to do with her share, and you'll have to live with the consequences of what you did." Robert observed Jake for a long moment before turning his gaze to the window. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I did what I did, but I hope you can move forward and do what's right for the family." Jake nodded, without any more words to say. He left Robert's office with a sense of closure. Their relationship would never be the same, but the truth had finally been revealed. In the months that followed, things began to change slowly. Anna decided to distance herself from life at the mansion and chose to return to the simplicity she had always known. She used part of her inheritance to start a small landscaping business, something she loved doing, and that kept her connected to the earth. Jake supported her decision, knowing it was the best thing for her. They stayed in touch, and over time, a true sibling relationship began to form, built on trust and respect. As for Jake, he decided to reshape his life. He remained at the helm of the family business, but now with a different perspective. The fortune and power no longer held the same appeal as before. He began investing in projects that made a difference, something his mother, if she were alive, would have approved of. Robert, on the other hand, left the mansion. He accepted his downfall with a strange dignity, retreating to a house in the countryside where he would live out his days with the weight of his decisions. He never again tried to interfere in Jake or Anna's lives. A year later, Jake and Anna reunited at the old mansion for a simple dinner, celebrating Anna's birthday. The necklace, now kept in a glass case, was a reminder of the past, but also a symbol of everything they had overcome. "Are you happy?" Jake asked Anna as they toasted with glasses of wine. Anna smiled, a genuine smile that carried the weight of her journey. "Yes, Jake, I am. Finally, I feel like I'm where I'm meant to be." Jake nodded, at peace as well. They had uncovered the truth, faced the secrets of the past, and now, with a fresh start, they were ready to build their own stories, free from the shadows that once surrounded them.